Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good day to you, depending where you are in the world. We're live here in London doing our nighttime devotion from the devotional To Be Like Jesus. The title today, Diffuse the Light Throughout the Dark World. Acts 17 verse 23 reads, As I was passing through and considering the objects of your worship, I even found an altar of this inscription, to the unknown God. Therefore, the one whom you worship without knowing, him I proclaim to you. Therefore, the one whom you worship without knowing, him I proclaim to you. Jesus taught his followers that they were debtors, both to the Jews and the Greeks, to the wise and the unwise, and gave them to understand that race distinction, caste, and lines of division made by human beings were not approved of heaven and were to have no influence in the work of disseminating the gospel. The disciples of Christ were not to make distinctions between their neighbors and their enemies, and they were to regard every person as a neighbor who needed help, and they were to look upon the world as their field of labor, seeking to save the lost. Jesus has given to both men and women their work, taking them from the narrow circle which their selfishness has prescribed, annihilating territorial lines and all artificial distinctions of society. He marks off no limited boundary for missionary zeal, but bids his followers extend their labors to the uttermost parts of the earth. The field of labor presents one vast community of human beings who are in the darkness of error, who are filled with longing, who are praying to one they know not. They need to hear the voice of those who are laborers together with God, saying to them, as Paul said to the Athenians, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship, him declare I unto you. The members of the Church of Christ are to be faithful workers in the great harvest field. They are to be diligently working and earnestly praying, making progress, diffusing light amid the moral darkness of this world. For are not the angels of heaven imparting to them divine inspiration? They are never to think of, and much less to speak of, failure in their work. They are to be filled with hope, knowing that they do not rely upon human ability or on finite resources, but upon the promised divine aid, the ministry of heavenly agencies who are pledged to open the way before them. Angels of God will break the way before us, preparing hearts for the gospel message, and the promised will accompany the labor, and the glory of the Lord shall be thy reward. Diffuse the light throughout the dark world. Here, the disciples were not to make distinctions between their neighbors and their enemies. They were to regard every person as their neighbor, regardless. We are not to stay within our narrow circle where our selfishness is prescribed. So we'll be annihilating territorial lines, artificial distinctions of society. It is man that creates division in man, and it's not just man himself, and it's the enemy behind him that would do that. So we break down those boundaries. So our missionary field is every single living soul. Notice I said living soul. We cannot pray for those that are dead. They can't hear us. They cannot do anything because they're dead. They're sleeping. The spirit has left their body and the consciousness is just there. And only when the Christ does come will will they maybe rise again to see him. Members of the church are to be faithful workers in the great harvest field, diligently working and praying, making progress, diffusing light, light being the truth in this moral, dark world. And we are never to think of, let's speak of failure in our work. And if you think about it, if you're going out and preaching or spreading the word one way or another, there's no such thing as failure if you're using his word, because even though they don't listen when you're there, it doesn't mean say you failed. You've dropped that seed. When you've dropped the seed, you've done what you were out to do. Someone else can then come in and nurture that seed.